I've always viewed the waterways as the rivers being the arteries and the canals the veins within England and Wales. The canals, through lack of use, fell into disrepair, and the majority of them were unnavigable. We now have 5,000 plus miles of navigable rivers and canals, and the health benefit for all is clear to see. This national campaign identifies both local and national risks to this, and why funding is still essential to the future success of the waterways. The canals started their slow decline over 100 years ago, canals falling into disrepair and disuse. In the late 1930s and 40s, along came a few individuals such as Rolt and Aitman, who founded the Inland Waterways Association, and who had one of these blue sky moments, a bit of thinking outside the box. Here we have a commercial waterways running out of steam. What do we use the waterways for? And they came up with leisure purposes, and thus in late 1940s a fledgling leisure industry started, which has grown and grown to create this fantastic network of rivers and canals. Blocked arteries and veins have reopened. In 1980, a similar blue sky moment occurred here in the docks. All these large warehouses were basically in extremely poor condition, not used, and under notice of demolition. Victoria Basin was also to be infilled. Then initial pressure from a local city councillor ignited the British Waterways Board, who were in charge at the time, Gloucester City Council, Gloucester Civic Trust, and loads others, who then decided to invest and to totally revitalise the whole area, and we are blessed with what we now have in the docks. Talking a little bit about volunteering, because there's a lot of volunteers here I know today. I started volunteering on the Waterways network in the 1970s on the Basingstoke Canal. It's now estimated that over 1 million volunteers have given tens of millions of hours over the past 70 years, opening up disused canals and rivers to create the current canal and river network. I'm sure that loads of people have volunteered and still currently volunteering, including the Canal and River Trust volunteers that we see around here today with their blue jumpers on. And we thank every single one of you for your support. However, all that commitment and effort requires long-term and adequate funding and investment to prevent a decline and wasting all that effort. As a local group, we've been canvassing people up and down the canal and here and around in the docks to find out what really are the problems that cause us, as a result of even today current funding cost-cutting issues that are not required in our time. So the first one is the summer day closure and the reduced summer opening hours. That started this year with the Gloucester Lock and the canal closed on Tuesdays, and now the opening hours were reduced from 8 AM to 6 PM. This seems to what angered boaters the most. Hire boaters who come down from the canal system are severely down in numbers. In fact, between us, we think there's only been a handful of hire boaters come into the canal this year. Because they lose one day by being trapped in Gloucester when they're on a very tight schedule to use up their 5 days or 7 days holiday. And for safety reasons, Gloucester Lock, which has been closed, which needs to be kept open, as the main basin is a safe haven for boaters and they expect the lock to be open. We also are advised that there is about 50% less boat movements this summer as a result of the reduced days and income. We need funds to be made available to avoid this happening next year. The 2-day winter closure that comes into effect at the end of October. At the meeting in the Waterways Museum before the winter closure started boaters were told that it was temporary and it would be restored back to normal opening. When, they want to know, is this to be lifted? The dock's mooring was closed from dredging, or for dredging, from October 22 until 7th of May this year. No mooring led to no boats, which affected the local docks economy, and a public meeting in late April drew attention to this, and the docks were then reopened a week later. Everyone is really pleased that CRT's dredging pledge for the docks and canals, and the dredging work has started again this week, and we can see the equipment in the middle, and it's been going for about 2 days so far. But just to point out the problem of the dredging, 3/4 of a mile down the canal, and those in the boats would have seen, is Bessie Ellen. Bessie Ellen is a tall ship, and she's waiting to come into the dry dock here with Nielsen's to actually be over a winter overhaul, and she can't get here until that silt is removed. Another point, funny enough, pulled up quite often really, is the National Waterways Museum. We are blessed here in Gloucester to have one, and most visitors are still surprised to find that the museum isn't open on Sundays. That's one of the other O2 waterways museums in the country. We need this needs reviewing to full weekend opening. And finally, again, another whinge and moan that comes out all the time is the visiting boaters' facilities have deteriorated and are inadequate for this major destination and need urgent investment to encourage boaters to visit Gloucester. There's some national issues facing the navigation funding, of course. So Canal and River Trust was formed from the old British Waterways Board 10 years ago, and government has based their funding model on that well-established charity, the National Trust. As a comparison, the National Trust was founded in 1895 and looks over just over 500 properties or areas in the UK, the majority of which are funded by members and visitors. In comparison, in England and Wales, there are over 5,000 miles of navigable canals and rivers. This astounds me, this information. 1,569 locks, which require lock gate renewal every 25 years. 53 tunnels, some of them miles long. 3,112 bridges, 370 aqueducts, and 74 reservoirs. And despite 800 million visitors, or visits, not visitors, visits per year, this total infrastructure contributes virtually zero income towards their maintenance. The comparison highlights the immense difficulty of the navigation authorities are under, and hence why increased funding is needed. The Toddbrook Reservoir, which collapsed in 2019, and the village of Whaley Bridge was saved by prompt action. The emergency repairs have cost around about 10 million. The permanent repairs, which are just starting, are costing a further 16 million. As a result of that accident, or that need to do the repairs, CRT now have to budget £25 million reserves from their income for such a similar occurrence. Because as far as I can work out, none of these structures are insurable. Nearly there, you'll be pleased to know. And just looking at the disaster of those 2 dams in Libya very recently, and the loss of life that occurred there, this accounts why a ruptured dam is on the top 10 risk listed by the Government National Security Risk Assessment, which is published recently. There are lots of funding opportunities, and I know loads of people who use the Waterways magazines and various publications. There have been lots of contributors for the past 6 months or so there are a plethora of ideas suggested from contributors for further ways of attracting further funding into the various navigation authorities. So food for thought for the navigation authorities. and no doubt we'll hear more in the future. And finally, thank you all again for coming today. It is extremely well impressive from stood up here. And just to repeat what Jack said, in April 2027, Gloucester Docks and its canal is 200 years old, a bicentenary, and none of us has seen one of those on the docks before, unless we're that old. A group of volunteers are currently involved in the current stages, or the early stages of promoting this massive opportunity for Gloucester, and our liaison with Canal and River Trust and Gloucester City Council to hopefully have a full year's celebration of events. Already identified are 27 tall ships who might be able to attend. So what a sight the Forest of Mast, recreating 100 years ago in the docks, would look across the basin. An opportunity to be grasped by our community. Thank you very much for listening. And the next person is going to be Les Etheridge from the Inland Waterways Association. Thank you.
Until last week, I was actually the national chairman of the Inland Waterways Association. But earlier this year, I moved into a different role when we set up Fund Britain's Waterways, and I act as chair of Fund's Britain Waterways, which is why I'm here today. Colin's gone into great detail, and I will be probably sure I'll be a lot shorter. Our waterways are a fantastically valuable national asset, which we're extremely fortunate to have. They provide so many different benefits to us all. Economic benefits, social benefits, levelling up benefits, health benefits, well-being. There's just so many good things. And those waterways, as Colin has said, were saved back in the 50s and 60s by a massive volunteer effort, led initially by people like Tom Rolt and Robert Aikman, who set up the IWA. But there are so many canal societies that have been set up over the years. We've got the Cotswold Canal Trust here today, who will tell us something about theirs. We have the Avon Navigation Trust, which was saved by volunteers. And that, as Colin said, has millions and millions of hours have gone into actually supporting and creating what we have today. Now, the value in the waterways comes from well-maintained waterways. If the waterways are not well-maintained, then the value is diminished and lost. Now, earlier this year, a number of organisations came together because we were very concerned about the level of funding for the waterways. We could see a situation where the Environment Agency were being given 50% of what they said they needed to run their navigations in revenue terms, and only a third in capital terms. You can't maintain your waterways properly with that level of funding. We also see a situation up in Scotland where Scottish canals, on the lowland canals, restored back in the early 2000s, are now facing over 100 million backlog of works. So you can see what's going to happen with the Scottish canals, which we can't see happen. And equally, Canal and River Trust have been facing their problems. At the point that their grant was frozen in monetary terms, the increasing impacts of climate change and the high inflation we've been suffering have made life extremely difficult for them. So all our navigational authorities have been struggling. This is the first time I've ever been barracked by boat horns, but there we go. So back in June, we set up Fund Britain's Waterways. We had about 20 organisations at the initial meeting. We're now at around 100 organisations. And they're not just boating organisations, they're organisations representing all sorts of different things. We have the Heritage Alliance for a member, we have the Angling Trust, we have all sorts of people with an interest in waterways, and we want as many organisations as possible to join the Fund Britain's Waterways. It's absolutely free, so if your organisation's interested in the waterways as got thing, then please sign up. Our marquee's been gradually disappearing in the wind, but there is information in there we can give you to help do that. Now, we all know that the UK's finances are not in the healthiest of states, and there are, of course, many calls on the government funding, health, education and all the rest. So why should we fund the waterways? Well, firstly, for the value they provide. If you look just at the value provided by Canal and River Trust waterways, where figures are well documented, for about £50 million a year, the country gets over £6 billion worth of benefits. That's been properly calculated on the Treasury basis. So it's a phenomenal return on the investment that the government have to make. So why would you want to reduce that and damage those benefits that come? And in government terms, 50 million, it's loose change, isn't it? It's not a large amount of money. And if we don't get that investment, then we won't keep our waterways in proper condition and we won't get the benefits. Now, Colin and I had a discussion earlier about how many millions of hours have gone into waterways since probably 1946, 1947, when the movement really got going. I really don't know. It's millions and millions of hours. Do we want to see those millions and millions of hours lost to the nation, all the benefit they provided? Well, I for one don't, and I'm going to do everything I can to stop that happening. So there is a petition. Again, we can give you some information to help you sign it. We have getting towards 50,000 people signed it. We need a lot more people to sign it, and we need people to join Fund Britain's Waterways and show just how many people care about our waterways. So thank you very much to Colin and his colleagues for organising today here. Fantastic event, brilliant sight, see all the boats come under the bridge and all the horns going. So thank you to everyone, thank you for coming, and now I'll hand over as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Les from the IWA.
I'm Adrian and I'm the company secretary for Avon Navigation Trust. Avon Navigation Trust is an independent navigation authority responsible for the administration, maintenance and improvement of the River Avon in Gloucestershire, Worcestershire and Warwickshire. This comprises of 47 miles of navigation and 17 locks. The river was first made navigable some 400 years ago, and many of the structures are still in use today. Like Canal and River Trust, we are a charity, founded in 1950. Canal and River Trust, as you've heard, was founded 10 years ago as a charity, so we consider them as a younger, bigger brother. The river passes through the market towns of Tewkesbury, Pershore, Evesham, Bidford-on-Avon, Stratford-on-Avon. The navigation has long been regarded as a vital asset to these towns for tourism, business, well-being by the waterside. The navigation is linked to the Canal and River Trust network at either end of the navigation and provides a through route for touring boats linking Gloucestershire waterways to Warwickshire and the BCN. This also forms part of the popular Avon Ring route. The route is enjoyed by over 2,500 visiting boats every year, bringing much needed income for the aims of the Trust. We have 1,500 boats moored permanently on the navigation, several boat hire fleets, paddle sport clubs, cadet groups, youth activity opportunities and volunteering. The reduction in funding of the Canal and River Trust will inevitably mean that cost savings will be implemented and capital investment in the national waterway infrastructure will reduce. This will result in potential breakdown, closures and a reduction in the reliability of the network. This will have a knock-on effect to the income of Avon Navigation Trust, as a large part of the income the Trust generates is from visiting boats from the national network. A breakdown on any part of these routes has a detrimental effect on the income of the Trust. This will mean that Avon Navigation Trust will also need to rationalise maintenance and reduce our ability to invest in major refurbishments of our historic waterway. Avon Navigation Trust fully supports the campaign to fund Britain's waterways. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Adrian. It's going to be kind of like a last call for your flight type thing now. Have we got Ken from the Cotswold Canal Trust? Has he joined us today? Super job. So welcoming here Ken from the Cotswold Canal Trust. Thank you.
Right, thank you everybody. And Cotswold Canals Trust supports absolutely this need to fund the waterways properly. As an organisation, we've been around since about 1972. Our aspiration is to reopen the link between the Thames and the Severn, which is 36 miles long. It's about 54 locks, I think it is. Depends a bit on how you count the two double locks that we have as to whether they're one or two. The canal restoration is one of the foremost in the country. We have section phase 1A, which is pretty much open, and phase 1B, where the work is going at the present time. Now, as the canal is restored, it obviously needs to then be maintained and sustained, and on the Cotswold canals, this is currently being done by the Stroud Valleys Canal Company, which is also a registered charity, which looks after the operation and maintenance of the restored sections of the canal, principally in phase 1 of this western end. The connection with this canal is at Sewell Junction. I'm sure many of you know that. And hopefully it won't be that many years before you'll be able to go through Gloucester, down to Sewell, turn left and go as far as pretty much Brimstone, which is where there used to be a port in the valleys in the Cotswolds before the rise up to the summit level. Now, in order to sustain the canal, obviously we have many of the challenges that other organisations do. Maintaining a canal isn't cheap. It's difficult to derive enough income from the canal itself to cover those costs, and assistance really is needed. So it's not just the Canal and River Trust that's seeking the funding to be adequate for the waterways in Britain, but it's also small navigation authorities like SVCC that need help as well. Now, of course, our main context at the moment, at least, is canal restoration, and the argument for ploughing money into restoring canals is very, very severely weakened if it's not possible to look after the canals that are already in place, especially if that results in closures or long stoppages. So for that reason as well, the Cotswold Canals Trust is very, very much behind this campaign and wants to see it succeed. In our case, one of the opportunities that may exist to restore all or much of the canal in the shorter term is to do with water transfer from this side of the country across to the Thames. And it's some of these ancillary uses of canals that are perhaps little recognised, but they all offer an opportunity to help with maintaining canals, and the Canal and River Trust have got a scheme proposed using the Grand Union Canal as well. So we have waterways that are used by many people, but most people who use the waterways don't have to pay for it directly, and so there's no income coming in. We have people like boaters who certainly do make a contribution, but if the entire cost of keeping the waterways open fell on motors, then the boat licences would be unbelievably horrendous. So we're in a bit of a mess, and I think really the main argument is that the amount of money needed to keep these canals open and maintained properly is a very, very small proportion of what those canals give back to the country and society, and it should be looked at as an investment, and a critical investment, rather than just another cost to be slashed and cut, because at least at the moment things are not as they should be in terms of the national economy. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So the next speaker we've got up very shortly is going to be Richard Parry, the Chief Executive from the Canal Trust, but I'll just take the opportunity to mention now, stick around after Richard Parry finishes, as our MP for Gloucester is going to say a few words to close the rally afterwards. So without further ado, Richard Parry. Thank you, Jack, and I want to start by thanking all of you for being here today, particularly the boaters who come up the canal. It's a fine sight seeing you all come up the canal this morning. Thank you to the Fund Gloucester Waterways group for putting this event on, and thank you to all the partners involved in the Funding Britain's Waterways organisation for your campaigning zeal, supporting the national campaign as well. As you've heard from the other speakers, our canals are at the same time, but they've never been more popular, more well used, but also more at risk than they are today. It needs all of your voices to support the campaign, to secure the long-term investment that they need. Gloucester demonstrates how much benefit they deliver: economic benefit to the city, social benefit for people's health and well-being, and across the country, the environmental benefit that we see increasingly how vital it is that people have access to nature, that we invest in biodiversity and nature recovery, and our historic waterways provide all of this and more. But as you've heard, it's so vital we don't take them for granted. They may have been with us for 200 plus years. In the case of the River Severn, of course, a lot longer. They are, of course, requiring investment, so they will only continue to thrive to deliver those benefits with that investment. And as Ken said, it's a relatively small amount that's needed in the scheme of things. It's vital that we sustain the partnership with government and secure the support from government that reflects the benefits they deliver, but it's also vital that we grow the other sources of income that enable the Trust to deliver the long-term investment that the waterways need. And I appeal to everyone here to play your part in supporting us in generating that funding in order to keep the future of the waterways looking brighter than it has done in recent times. So we see such a powerful case. You've made the case today by being here and raising your voices. It is really important we keep the campaign growing and building, drawing in the millions of people who benefit from having a thriving waterway on their doorstep, delivering benefits to them, to their communities, and to all the other millions of people who use them. So thanks again for being here today, for raising your voices. We will continue this campaign through into next year, so we can continue to have politicians listen to what we say, but also the wider public. The main point of this campaign is so that we don't take for granted how important it is that our waterways need investment. They're more exposed to extreme weather than ever before. We've heard stories from overseas and our recent past about their vulnerability, and because of that historic condition that they're in, the investment will need to increase over time. And we need a settlement that will sustain that investment, that will grow the investment so that we can see our waterways have a prosperous future, to put back all the benefit that we can see realised today, and deliver a positive future for our waterways. Thank you again for being here. Thank you for those who've organised it. Thank you for supporting this campaign. The Canal River Trust is committed to ensuring that our waterways have a prosperous future, but that will only occur if we continue to make the case for the investment they need. There's a virtuous circle we can create of more investment leading to more benefit, and a vicious circle we must avoid, where if we don't secure the investment, they will once again enter that period of decline and their benefit will be lost. So please continue to make the case, support the campaign. Thanks very much. Thank you very much, Richard Parry. Our last speaker today then is going to be Richard Graham, who is our MP here in Gloucester. So Richard.
Thanks, Jack. Hi everybody, Jack, thank you for that, and big thanks to Colin and everyone who's organised this get-together of people who love our waterways, and particularly this canal. It's a great turnout from lots of you, different interests. Particularly good to see Tommy and Sarah Nielsen here. Tommy, you will remember, I think the first time I came to see you in 2007, I said then, and I would say it again to anyone, that what you do on the maintenance of the tall ships is the single most precious asset that Gloucester has. It's what brings our docks alive, it's what brings the tall ships here, attracts tourists and visitors, and it's also very special to those who learn and train how to do that maintenance, because we need to keep it going. But there's also the rest of you, those of you who've got barges here, who've got boats here, the young cadets, the sea cadets who come and train here, the paddle boarders, I hope more from the rowing club as well, so that this canal and this basin becomes a place where there's a constant hive of activity. I don't really recommend any of you doing what I did a few years ago for charity, which was to dive into the docks and come up with, I think, a Roman condom. But these amazing waterways are a precious part of what makes Gloucester special, along probably with the cathedral and Robinswood Hill and other great heritage features. And I think therefore the challenge that you've all laid today is effectively, is the government going to give enough support for this? And the answer in almost all these situations is that the government never does as much as people would like, because ultimately it's got a limited amount, not of their own money, but of taxpayers' money. And while we're thinking about the water here today, I spent yesterday evening on my return from Kiev and early this morning trying to deal with another problem of water, which is the swimming pool in GL1. So there are plenty of problems to tackle, there always are, always will be. But what I can give you my absolute commitment to is that I, and I think I can talk for the City Council as well, are absolutely determined that we, if you like, get the docks right and get the canal right for the benefit of everybody. So that's people who are living here, working here, coming here in barges, passing through, so that this not just remains the great attraction it already is, but becomes better and better and draws more and more people onto the water and to come and see what's happening. That is an absolute commitment. It's something I've also done to try and help the Herefordshire and Gloucestershire Canal Trust, who are rebuilding the 30 miles of canal between Gloucester and Hereford and are making steady, if slowish, progress. And any of you who've got a problem with what's happening here, whether it's to do with CRT services, connections with the City Council, stakeholders groups that you're not getting invitations to, problems with the dredging, my one ask of you all is let me know in advance as early as you can, because what tends to happen is that people come to me after something has gone bankrupt or something is in real trouble, and the more advance warning you can give, the more I can do to try and convene people and look for solutions, just as I'm trying to look for solutions on GL1 and the Oxtal Sports Centre. So guys, you've got my complete support. The CRT are always going to, quite rightly, try and get more money out of government, but as I pointed out to Richard earlier, remember this is the only organisation in the country, literally, not even GCHQ or the Ministry of Defence, who know what money they're going to get after 2027. And it would have been the easiest thing in the world for the government to have said, guys, we can't make commitments beyond 26, 27 now, come back in a year's time. They didn't. They've made a commitment. It's not an increase in money, but I regard that as a starting point. That is a base. And as things start to recover, and as the CRT, with help from all of us, reaches out to find more sponsors, more commercial organisations who want to get involved, find ways of tapping into the lottery fund, particularly the Heritage Lottery, that will be vital for the bicentenary in 2027. You know, we've had 40 successful Heritage Lottery wins here over the last 10 years, but not one of them, as far as I know, has come through the CRT and to do with the docks and the canal. So there's a huge opportunity, and I will work with you and everyone who wants to do that. So all power to your elbows, keep the campaign going, but bear in mind the context that I've given you. Putting out for more money now for beyond 26, 27, I think is going to be a hard ask. But keep the campaign going, because showing your interest and commitment will make sure that we politicians don't forget. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Richard Graham. So you heard it from the man himself. Write to him, let him know all your issues in advance as best you can. So thank you everybody for joining us today. Thank you for everyone who's come from far and wide, to the boaters who have made the trip up the canal, and to our speakers today, Adrian, Ken, Colin and the Richards. There's not a lot we'll keep you for now, especially as the drizzle's starting to set in, but just to let you know, this is really just the start of the campaign that we're launching here in Gloucester, and just a part of the Fund Britain's Waterways national campaign. So please sign up to our mailing list, keep posted. You've got all the information with the IWA here if you'd like to sign the petition. This is just the start really, so let's build on this and make sure that our waterways are getting funded properly. Thank you very much.